this is Peter from the Sampleist, and today we will be checking out the Plankton Bundle by Soundust. Soundust consists of a grumpy human named Pendle and a hairy dog named Percy. They are well known for unique and high-quality sound sets and sampled instruments, with this bundle being no exception. They have a range of sampled instruments, from a cello played with garden twine, to instruments that celebrate sampling artifacts, to a sponge-muted piano, to a hybrid saxophone plus harmonium, and many more. Plus some synth presets for Surge, Omnisphere, Zebra, and Diva. The Plankton line is all about sequences and inspiration. As you will see in the walkthrough and demo, it can serve as a launching pad for ideas or as an easy way to inject uniqueness into a composition. The bundle consists of 3 individual products: Plankton Sonar, Plankton Drummer, and Plankton Sequencer. Sonar includes various sine, electric piano, sponge piano, glass, metal, and Hammond B3 sound sources. Drummer includes kicks, claps, snares, hats, and various other drum-like sounds. Sequencer provides MIDI export to use with whatever you see fit. All of them can quantize their pitches to at least 24 different scales, even the drummer. Each of the instruments cost £50, and the bundle of all 3 costs $105. Altogether, they take up about 2.5 gigabytes of hard drive space and require the full version of Contact 5.8 or above to run. There are about 270 snapshots across all 3 instruments and over 5,000 samples between Sonar and Drummer. Each instrument has 12 sequencers, which include lanes for sample select, pitch, decay, velocity, and up to 5 user-selected effects. Thanks to Soundust for a review copy of the Plankton Bundle. While the Soundust provided us a review copy, they did not have any input into the decision-making process or review, and have not seen this ahead of time. Right, so these instruments are best explained via demonstration, so let's dive into some presets. We'll go Drummer, Sonar, Sequencer, and then a walkthrough and wee bit of experimentation with Sonar before we get to the demo. Alright, so here we are with Plankton Drummer. Because of the nature of the instruments in this bundle, I will unfortunately have to talk a little bit. You are going to have to deal with a bit more of my voice because I will need to explain a few things while I'm going through the sounds. So really quick, this is consistent across all of them, but you've got the rainbow of keys up here in the C5 octave, and this is the core of what you'll be using. Each of these is going to be playing a different sequencer, which is in the drummer's case associated with a different type of sound. So we can see we have the boom sounds assigned to the C5. Okay, and then what I'll do for these presets is I'll kind of just gradually add and subtract some of these sounds and play around with which sequences are playing. And then when it comes to the walkthrough, I can give a little bit more detail about what all of these nice little sequences are, and some that you might not even see right at first. Right, so you kind of get the general idea of Plankton from that, from any of the three. You'll get the feel. Drummer, Sonar, and Sequencer, they all kind of give off the same sorts of vibes. They have very, very similar GUIs. Keyboards laid out pretty much the same in all three. So you kind of get an idea from any one of these three what you're getting. So let's listen through a couple of the Sonar presets. One of the things I didn't talk about in Drummer, but it becomes very clear when looking through the snapshots in Sonar, is that, as I mentioned in the intro, you can snap to a whole bunch of different scales in a whole bunch of different keys. So in the case of Sonar, basically all of the basic snapshots are given to you in different versions that match different keys, and they kind of Pendle Soundust kind of plays around with the exact scales that we're working with. So for example, if we look at this David Essex in the A, it's A major. When we look at it in A sharp, it's A sharp pentatonic major. And so it just tries to keep you on your toes. Like, let's try the D sharp Spanish 8 tone. Maybe helps push you to try different scales that you otherwise would not think about. Yeah, it's really cool, like with a single snapshot, some of the different combinations of sounds here can really give you totally different vibes, makes them pretty flexible. Okay, so last up we have the sequencer. It's a bit tougher to show because the power is in creating the MIDI sequences that you can export and use with whatever you want. But it does provide an internal sound, so we can listen to some of these presets with just the onboard sounds. All right, so those are some of the sounds that come out of this bundle. I'm not going to do a huge walkthrough because Pendle of Sound Dust has a whole bunch of videos that do walkthroughs, and he's much more entertaining than I am. So I highly recommend you check those out. And he really gets into, you know, some of his mindset about making these tools, and really fun to watch him play through. So I'll give you some of the highlights of what you see here. Just a few notes specifically on the sequencer because it's a bit different, and then I'll jump over to Sonar to get a little bit more detailed. So first, you'll see this on all three. You've got a scale and a key. So the exact list of scales is slightly different in the three different instruments, but in all cases, you've got, I think, at least 24 keys to work with, or scales, sorry, and then the usual culprits for the keys. In specifically the sequencer's case, you obviously play through the notes with the keyboard, but if you want to record the MIDI, there's this MIDI recorder button. It will capture whatever you're playing. You can choose if it's single or multi-channel. So let's do, as an example, multi-channel. I mean, not like you're gonna really see. Maybe I'll pull out the output just so you can actually. Feeling nice today. So let's start the recorder. Okay, it's giving me a nice indication of how much room it has left in the buffer. Once that's done, just going to hit that MIDI recorder button again, and now very easy to understand. We have a MIDI file recorded. Drag me. Right, so I've dragged that off onto my desktop. It has created a MIDI file, and I will pull that up for you right before we come over to the Sonar walkthrough. Just before I bring that up, though, let's see. One specific thing I wanted to bring up that is in Sequencer and not in the others. So you'll notice in the others there's effect slots. You would have heard in the walkthrough some of the effects coming on and off along with the sequencer. Obviously, when you're generating a MIDI file, you can't really do that, but there is this delays option here, which is kind of cool. So it'll add basically a MIDI, like a repeated MIDI note as a delay. So kind of a cool feature there. Yeah, and then you can drag and speed up the tempo a bit. You can in the other ones you've got the humanize option. So lots of really fun ways to distort what you're doing. Right, so let's take a quick look at that MIDI file, and then we will jump over to Sonar. I've just taken that little MIDI export we made. I've split up the 5 tracks into 5 different instruments and just thrown on piano, trumpets, cello, clarinets, and flutes. So let's just see what happens. Right, so yeah, I was just kind of playing around, didn't have a specific vision for this, but gives you just that sense of how you can use that as a tool to then drive some of your other orchestration. So with that being said, let's jump over to Sonar and just take a look at a couple more features. And now we have Sonar again. So I will do a quick look. Pendle does, as I've said, he does a great job in his walkthroughs, really gets into the detail, kind of goes a mile a minute. So much more information density than I can give, and much more entertaining and informative. So definitely check that out if this looks like an interesting instrument to you. But I'm going to just give you a quick overview so you get an idea of what sort of things are going on. So as you know from the preset walkthrough, we've got these rainbow colors up here, and these will each be tied to a different set of sequencers. So I've got right now the C key playing. If I switch the note I'm playing, it'll switch the user interface here. You can actually switch it yourself with this toggle button. So if you're kind of messing around, maybe you're holding the E and you want to just take a look at, or you've pushed the E previously and you just want to look at what the F is giving you, you can just toggle around like this. But yeah, this is the core up here, these sequencers. So I've got the G sharp version selected here. You can basically see we have sample, pitch, decay, velocity, and these are pretty straightforward. The sample is the actual impact of the sample. It's this one. Let me just play it. You can. Yeah, so it's giving it kind of like, in this case, a bit of an octave type change. Each of these you can zoom in for a more detailed view by clicking on it, which is pretty handy if you want to get into the nitty gritty. there's a presets button down here, which is great. So I did walk through some of the snapshots, but you can actually change these individual notes with their own set of presets. You can save your own as well. So really like when there's this sort of modular nature to the presets. Then things get, for me at least, I feel like they get extra interesting with this FX lanes here. So when I click on this, it exposes different tracks. So right now they all say unused. And actually, let me just kick this back up again. Okay, so I can actually sequence the effects, and right now a lot of them are turned off, which is noted by the blurriness. That is not a requirement for new glasses, for those of you who might have been worried. So the blurred out means the effects are off. So if I, let's say, bitrate is a pretty nice example to give. So I'm gonna, let's say, just have it come up and down a couple times over the sequence. Now, if I play it right now, I have not turned it on. You can actually see the dial modulating. So now I'll turn it on. Yeah, so you've got 5 of these lanes to use. The drummer has this option as well with the effects. Obviously, the sequencer, because it's just MIDI output, you can't really apply effects to the MIDI, though there is that there was that delay option which actually produces delayed MIDI notes. So that's that. You've got a few of the options. So you've got a transient, you've got a filth, you've got a flanger, you've got delay. You've got impulse. This is kind of a fun one to play with dynamically. So if you do IR mix, so you can kind of dynamically change the mix of the I like the effects that sort of thing comes out. The types of impulses are actually interesting. So it's not just kind of reverb stuff. You've got some like more interesting things that get involved in there. So right now this is, I guess, a polite setting, which is, I guess, you know, it's what comes to mind when I think of the English, right? They're very polite. I'm just kidding. Or am I? I don't know. Just ignore what I said. So yeah, pretty cool impulse responses to play around with here. Maybe I will mention really quickly down here there are 3 tabs. Sequencer will just have 2 of them, but over in the mixer you can actually you can change. Yeah, as you would expect, you can change the volume levels of these different keys. You can also see what the IR mix is for everything here. And then you've got a master filter and a master reverb to throw into the whole mix. What else? So yeah, so that's there. Then the scale. So just to give you an idea, we've got all of these kinds of scales. Some of the obvious players up top, and then some really interesting ones as you go lower down. To be quite honest, I haven't heard of half of these, but they've got me interested, and they can come out with really cool results. Just going to turn that off, but obviously how they'll work is you play around with the pitch and it will quantize the pitch to the scale and the key that you've selected. So and this one works with everything. So it'll be all unified across everything, whereas the effects will be per channel, which is really cool. So you can put totally different impulse responses on all 12 of these guys. You can put totally different bit rate changes, transients. You can have some effects on some channels and some off on others. So lots of options there. And then down here, like just the, more straightforward sort of like your play rate, your number of steps in the sequence, whether you've got some swing, some drag, some humanness to it. And then for each of the 12, so this is a bit different in Drummer. So in Drummer, you have like families of samples locked to each of these keys. In Sonar, you have 6 options, which are the same 6 options for all of your keys here. There's this dropout seed or round robin. So the option here is basically, do you want like round robin samples playing so that it gives you that little bit of difference as you play through, or you can have this random dropout, so it'll kind of randomly just not play the note when it's supposed to, and that can add a little bit of randomness and inspiration to what you're doing, give you a little bit of surprises. I mean, most of this stuff here is good at helping you get some inspiration and surprises. One last quick thing to mention is the purple keys. So I believe from watching walkthroughs and such, the way they'll work is you have 6 different types of samples. So you have a sine, electric piano, sponge piano, glass, metal, and a Hammond B3 in Sonar. And basically the different octaves will be the different samples. They will be quantized to the key, the scale that you've chosen. So down here I've got my sines. So if I turn this off, you'll just hear a chromatic. Right, so that's kind of what's going on there. But one thing that's kind of cool is if you have effects going for a particular key up here, whether they're static or changing through the effects lane, it will affect all of the same key in the different octaves as you go down. So like if I play, gotta turn the, right, that's the impulse. And now if I play, so let's see, if I stop like right here, okay, I guess it's just modulating this dial. So if I play that there, you can hear the impulse is being applied, whereas if I start the sequence over, the impulse is down to mostly dry. I play this again and it's mostly dry. So that's another cool little thing. You can add some impromptu playing, some improvisation, or maybe some directed playing, maybe some specific melodies in these octaves, and it will still, some of this change that's happening in the sequencers will still bleed through. The lower parts also have this articulator option, so if all of these sequencers weren't enough for you, you can actually add more. So if I've got this G sharp on the, I think it's the Hammond, so I can turn this off, or turn this to different things. So different options. I've got a flam, drag, rough roll, buzz, which is like kind of a glittery thing, or like a strummy thing, I'll say. And then I can just have straight 16ths playing. I can change the velocity, contrast. So like lots of options, and this articulator is per key. So all of these guys can have different articulator options. Yeah, so a lot to work with there, and yeah, really like just it looks like this one page, but it's super deep, and it's really well organized so that you have the right information coming at you at the right time. So despite having all of this going on under the hood, I never feel overwhelmed looking at this. I do sometimes get overwhelmed thinking about the possibilities and like trying to direct myself, but that's where the snapshots and presets can really help. But this is one of those things that it looks very simple, and the concept is it's unique and kind of straightforward in a way, but just the depth that Soundust has gone to, and kind of all the nuance, all of the different modularity of this thing, it really has a lot of possibility to it. Yeah, so that's enough of me speaking. Check out, I'll say it again, this is the third time, check out Pendle's videos if you want even more detail about this. So he has videos on all three of these. So yeah, let's head over to the demo and see how this can be used in context. All right, so what I had in mind with this one was like a documentary type of backing track. I put in a couple of sort of cues of, you know, the dynamic changing. So start out a little bit softer, get into something that's a bit more intense and dynamic, and then drop off again at the end. So yeah, we start out, I have an instance of drummer using a rock step preset. I have an instance of sonar using a 3 steps preset. And I'm lucky enough to also have my hands on the original Plankton, and I've set it to the nature dock setting. So that's what we hear in the intro. gives this a nice build by putting the different sequencers on as we go along, adding more of them as we get towards the end of the section. Now maybe it's a good time to bring up Drummer. So as you saw a bit of the walkthrough with Sonar, one of the differences in Drummer is how these lilac keys will work. So in Sonar, you kind of had one one type of sample mapped to an octave, and as you jumped octaves, it would change the samples. So in this case, we have families of samples that correspond to specific types of hits. So like boom, clack, doof, crack, smack, and so on. And each of these has a list of 6 different possibilities. And so when I go down to play these lilac keys, if I've got the booms, for example, so, you know, a few different types of kicks, they will play across that way. So otherwise, very, very similar. The GUI looks almost identical. And you've still got these effects lanes, fewer of them here on the drums, but yeah, still got this articulator and basically everything else. So just wanted to take a quick moment to bring that up because I used the kick specifically to just give me a little bit of that downbeat oomph. I kind of ramp it up in intensity in this middle section, ease off again at the end, which is, you know, something, despite all this quirkiness and randomness, it gives me this anchor that I can get to, which I choose. So, yeah, I don't know. Let's just take a quick peek at some of these ramps. Goes all the way up to yeah, and of course with the drums, yeah, you can pull out the lower end to give it just that little bit of a cool transition effect, or yeah, change the vibe to something. Maybe the person is saying something super interesting at this point, and you want to just highlight that moment. You pull out the low end there. But really, not, I mean, from my perspective, I just kind of plonked down a few keys and it gave me, I think, a relatively rich and appropriate backing for this type of setting. Yeah, also just for those of you curious, this is what's playing in this nature dock setting of the original Plankton. I think it would be something that you could definitely emulate with Sonar. Sonar is was the upgrade to the original Plankton. So I've kind of included it for the original for posterity, I guess, but the new Sonar is better, and it kind of fits the same sort of soundscape. So this is where things kind of get interesting. So I've got this more intense section up here. What I've done is, so with Sequencer, obviously I showed the example where you play some MIDI, you save the MIDI out, and then you can import multi-track MIDI and assign the different tracks to different instruments. But what you can do if you want to be a bit more dynamic and kind of be maybe more in the moment, and I'll just plop it up here, but basically I've got an audio routing. This'll look different depending on the DAW you're using. I in FL Studio can do this visual thing using Patcher, which is really great, but in others you can just route the MIDI as you see fit. So route the MIDI out of the Plankton Sequencer instance, and I've routed it into a string section that's playing some pizzicato. So it's really, for me, very intuitive to play with this dynamically, so I can hear what it sounds like in real time. If you're more comfortable kind of hearing the arrangement with the internal sound, with the kind of sine pinging that's going on, you could really make some interesting orchestrations this way, I think. One thing to keep in mind is don't forget about the delay thing. So because it's not an effect, it behaves just slightly differently. So don't forget, if you hear notes continuing to play when it sounds like things have stopped, this could be the reason. So basically I've routed the Plankton into a string section, a brass section, woodwind section, and into a piano for all of this kind of top piece here. The orchestral stuff is all short articulations, which, as you would imagine, go particularly well here. I have not played around with trying to get some sustains working maybe through some sort of gating, but the immediate use would be for shorter articulations. So let's play through, listen. Let me listen to just these together. There's that delay coming, but yeah, really fun stuff. It really, I don't know, for me, really brought this to life, being able to use this. Obviously you've got to take care that some types of sequencing won't sound particularly good with orchestral instruments, like with a string section, but might sound better with some sort of drum or a piano, and vice versa. So again, another good reason, in my opinion, to play around with this in real time. But yeah, it was quite fun to use it to make this track, and create some sounds that I would not really think to orchestrate myself. So also a good experimentation and learning tool. Sorry, then we'll just bump off to the end. So a nice little taper down there. As you can imagine, piano is one of these instruments that will work quite well. Sonar, for example, has piano, electric piano type instruments in there. So adding your own piano whatever your favorite might be is a good thing to experiment with this with the sequencer. Really cool when you're adding some of these different tracks on the sequencer. Really cool to hear, especially with something like a piano having the huge, range that it does. Yeah, it's really cool. And of course, there is the ability to add in some warping, some humanization, that sort of thing. Yeah, a bit of drag and acceleration. So you can also use this to help humanize things. Yeah, and I didn't mention this, but I, tuned these all to D pentatonic major, something, relatively cheery, but not too busy with the number of notes. So, it sits a little bit better in the background, but made it really easy to just make these all work together. So, almost in some cases, just you slam on the keyboard and it sounds good. Once you kind of get the idea of this thing. So yeah, maybe a good time to just talk a little bit about my thoughts having played around with it. I think it's very unique. What I hope through this walkthrough is you're able to see what its shtick is, because it's got a very sort of specific feel to it that I think you'll know, having seen it and heard it and gotten a basic idea of how it works. I think it makes it really clear whether you think this will fit into your workflow or not. I think that the quality is very high, so it's a very well thought out instrument. It's got a lot of depth to it, but the user interface is relatively simple and intuitive. So if this sort of articulator idea resonates with you, I think I think you'll see that in the walkthrough, in the videos, and in what Pendle shows. So yeah, pretty unique thing, and a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun playing around with it. So I think it's going to help stretch me is the other thing. So just help me think in ways that I would not normally think myself, but also able to keep it musical. So the ability to snap to scales and that sort of thing means it's kind of just that little bit of randomness to push you, but it's not so random that I don't know what it's doing and I can't learn from it. So I feel like I can still learn from this one, which is really important. Yeah, as always, hope you found this informative. Hope that it helped you understand the tool better. And yeah, we really appreciate your feedback. So throw in some comments if you have questions. And yeah, please like and subscribe. Keep us going strong. And we'll see you next time on the Sampleist.